Alright, so to do a proof print, you guys are just going to come to the back table and I am going to be inking up the piece of plexiglass. That's what this piece of plastic is. This is what we're going to roll out our ink on. This is printing ink, so it's not paint. You can see it says block printing ink on it, and we're just going to be using black like I said. This is a brayer. Okay, brayer, or some people call it a roller, but it's really called a brayer, and kind of similar to a paint roller if you've ever used a paint roller to maybe paint the walls in your house. So this part rolls right here. So I'll show you guys how to get the ink out on the plexiglass nice and neat, and then also roll up your printing plate. Like I said, this one I'll do, but when we go to print on your good papers, you guys will do that on your own. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put out a tiny little line of ink. So it's kind of like a tube of toothpaste. You got to squeeze it, squeeze the ink down to the bottom. And I want you to notice that I put the brayer down on the printing plate so that I can see how wide I need to make that line of ink, right? So I don't want to do it any wider than the roller part of it. So you can see like it's even a little bit narrower than the roller, okay? So now I'm gonna even out the ink. So I'm gonna pull it down, pick it back up, start at the top, pull it down, pick it back up, start at the top. If you just go back and forth, the ink just stays in one spot. So we want to get it even on all sides of that brayer. So I'm gonna pull it down, pick it back up, okay? I'm just staying in one nice, neat little area. I'm trying to make a square of ink. So now that I have it like pretty even this direction, now we're gonna go to the side and I'm gonna pull it down, pick it back up, do that a bunch of times going this direction. Okay, so I want you to notice how nice and neat the ink is on this square. We don't want to put it all over the plexiglass because it just makes a giant mess and it actually wastes the ink. So once I think I have it all evened out, keeping it in this nice neat square, you can hear that nice sticky sound. If you can hear that sticky sound, you have a good amount of ink. Okay, look at all those little peaks of ink in there, right? We'll talk about that more when we do your print on your good paper. So now I'm going to take my printing plate and I'm going to put a piece of paper underneath it just to keep the table clean. You guys will be doing this at the back table. Actually, I'm just going to get the table dirty. Never mind. You'll also be using a piece of newsprint paper. You're going to have your name on the bottom of that newsprint paper. So it's just like a really thin piece of paper. It's for a proof print, like I said, a practice print. So now I'm going to take the brayer, which has ink on it. Don't want to wait around because this ink dries in the air just like paint. And I'm going to roll back and forth just over the surface of my printing plate. And then I'm going to set the brayer down. Notice I'm going to set it in the ink, okay? So you can see it's all inked up. It's all black now. I'm going to take my printing paper, and I'm just going to set it right over top of this. And I'm going to use the palm of my hand, like this part of your hand right down here. It's called like the heel of your hand. You're going to use that to rub over the surface of the paper. And so basically you're making sure that that ink transfers from your paper or from your plate to your printing paper. Okay, so once you know you got the whole thing, you can lift it up. And there's my practice print or my proof print. It looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. Now, you can probably see in the glasses, there are some little spots that printed that I didn't plan for them to print. I can try to push those down a little bit harder to make sure that that part prints more clearly. But if it doesn't, that's okay because the majority of it is pretty clear. So don't be surprised if some areas of your design print like little spots like that. Those are called remnant marks. You know, that's just kind of like the nature of printing, okay? But it still looks pretty darn cool. So now I can put this on the drying rack and I can go and clean off my plate in just under water. So you're just going to put it under water and very, very gently clean the top of it, dry it off, and I'll have a container for you guys to put those in. Okay, so now that I did my proof print, I went back and I pressed onto those areas a little bit more that printed, and I had cleaned my plate. You can see it dried with a little bit of ink still stuck on it. Like it's a little bit gray in some spots, but it is perfect and it's ready for printing on my good papers. So we're gonna do 8 prints, 4 on one paper, 4 on the other, to complete the project. Okay, so you guys are gonna be doing the printing on this step. So you're gonna have to be putting out the ink for yourselves. And if you struggle with getting it out of the bottle, you just call me over. But remember from the proof print video that you want to keep the ink in one nice, neat little square. So every single time you put out new ink, you have to even it out. And after a couple of prints, the ink starts to get used up and get dried up. So you're gonna have to put out a little bit of ink every couple of prints. Okay, so this ink is kind of drying up a little bit. So I'm just gonna put out a tiny little bit of ink, okay? Now, let me show you what happens if you put out too much ink, because it's guaranteed gonna happen, okay? So this, what I just put out right here, this is enough prints for like the whole class. Okay, enough ink for like the whole class to print with. That's way too much ink, and I'll show you what it's gonna look like. So I'm gonna start like pulling back my brayer, lifting it up, pulling it back, lifting it up, and the brayer like barely even wants to roll because there's so much ink. So check it out. Look at those like big lines in there, right? Those like peaks of ink. They're huge. That means there's way too much. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna call me over, and I'm gonna come over with a little rectangle of poster board, and I am going to scoop up this extra ink, and I'm going to put it off to the side right here. Okay, then you're going to take the ink that's on the brayer, and you're going to pull it back, lift it up, pull it back, lift it up. Do that a bunch of times one direction, a bunch of times the other direction. Okay, still too much ink. So I'm going to get more off. Now, trust me, you don't want to try to print with too much ink, because if you do, your prints, they are not going to come out clearly at all. Okay, you're not going to be able to see your emoji, so trust me on this. So I'm going to try to even it out again. So pull it back, pick it up, pull it back, pick it up. All right, so for your first print, so now I have it, I can start to hear those little sticky sounds, and look at all the peaks of the ink. Remember how big they were when I had way too much ink? Right? Now look at how tiny all those little peaks of ink are, right? So that's what we're looking for, and it should sound sticky, right? If it doesn't sound sticky and your brayer's just gliding through it, then you have too much ink. So now when I run out of ink, I'm gonna use this ink. I'm gonna scoop up a little, and I'm gonna put it out here, right? So this will kind of be like a putty knife. You're gonna put it out there with that, okay? So we have so much here, we don't need to use any from the bottle until this is all gone, all right? Okay, you guys are going to do a proof print at your table with that newsprint paper, so you can get your name on it and your room number, and you're going to ink up your plate. You're going to get ink on the table. It's okay. I'm keeping that in that nice, neat little square. You guys are going to have to share brayers and plexi. I'm going to ink up that plate. And I have the ink evenly on the surface. It's that nice rich black. And I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to flip it over, burnish the back. That means rubbing evenly to get the ink transferred from the plate to the paper. Remember, I'm using the heel of my hand, which is this part right here. When I'm ready, lift it up. Looks pretty darn good, okay? So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm gonna set it aside, and now I'm ready to start printing on my good painted paper, okay? So keep maybe one on your chair. I suggest you guys are standing while you're printing, so I have just one here at my table, okay? And I wanna make sure I don't get any ink on it anywhere else except for right where I'm printing, and we're going to use that cross that you could probably still see on there from the photocopy machine that I put on there for you guys, that we're going to use that as a guide for where you're going to put your printing plate. So I still have enough ink. It's still really, really sticky. Every single print you have to re-ink your plate. So I'm going to roll it up again, okay, and it looks good. Now, when we print on the painted papers, we have to do it a little bit different. We actually have to pick it up, and we have to align it with that cross. So I'm going to stick two of the corners lined up on there, stuck it down. Now, you don't want it to be sliding around, okay? So I'm just going to very carefully, I'm going to kind of rub the back, holding it in place with one hand, rubbing the back with the other. So you're rubbing the side with your name on it. Okay, and when I'm ready, when I think I got the whole thing, I'm gonna lift it off of there. Oops. Lift it off there. Looks pretty good, right? It didn't come out as clearly as on my proof, but that's okay. I'm pretty happy with it still. I'm gonna set it back down. I'm gonna go on to my next one. So I still have enough ink. I'm gonna ink it up. Okay, pick it up. Place it down. All right, keep it in place with one hand. Very, very carefully rub the back with the other hand. Get all four corners. I can feel my plate. It wants to move because of all that ink in there. Don't let it move. Make sure the whole thing transfers. Okay, I think that's good. I'm gonna lift it up. Oh yeah, that one came out a lot better. Okay, so I'm gonna set it back down. Still I'm good on ink. I'm gonna ink up my plate again. I'm gonna flip it over. So I'm on my third out of four. I'm going to line it up with that cross in the center. Set it down. Hold that plate in place with one hand. Rub the back with your fingertips with the other hand. When you know you got the whole thing, lift it up. And repeat. Okay, I need some new ink, so check it out. Oh my goodness gracious, I have so much ink right here. So I'm going to take this, just a little bit on the piece of poster board, and I'm going to like pretend like it's like a putty knife, and I'm gonna put that out across where the ink needs to go. See, I just kind of like drug it across here, set that back down, even it out. Sounds nice and sticky. I think I actually have too much still. Take some away. Oh yeah, nice and sticky now. Whoops. All right, you're gonna repeat that whole process again on your other painted paper. If you don't finish in one class, you're gonna clean this and then continue in the next class. You'll have 2 papers that have 8 prints on it, just like this, or sorry, 4 per paper.